seguaci. Questa non sarà una guerra di eroi. Le nazioni si massacreranno a vicenda, mentre noi ci arricchiremo.
Ci sarà da divertirsi.
Non potete tenermi rinchiuso mentre il mondo brucia.
Figliolo, in verità è un mondo governato da corruzione e avidità.
Dobbiamo intervenire.
Certamente.
It's a history lesson. It's not a precise history lesson, but if you were a history teacher, you would definitely interest your pupils in the period. It might be a good point from which to jump off, to get them excited. But the individual historical details are messed up and Kingsmanified and sometimes surreal and sometimes crazy. But the greater themes in it are somehow true about the historical movement that was going on at the time, and also in it there's a quite interesting moral lesson going on about individuals having to make moral choices at points in time when all the authorities appear to be deranged. And in that sense, it feels rather contemporary, even though we shot it 3 years ago, and even though it's set 100 years before that. So it's oddly, in its light entertainment category, has some profundity in it, quite a lot of it, I think. Particularly the tussle, I'm talking too much, but particularly the tussle of the son and the father about, you know, taking action versus not taking action, all of that kind of, that's very, very apropos at the moment.
It's true. I mean, I think he's a man of integrity. He has a great sense of right and wrong. I think we learned from the film that he's been to war as a younger man and seen the horrors of war and done some pretty terrible things as a soldier in conflict. We get a sense of that. So I think and also we know, and this is not a spoiler, I mean, in the first 5 minutes of the film, he loses his wife in a flashback sequence. So we understand this is a man bruised and wounded by loss and trauma. So we understand why he is a committed pacifist. But I think essentially he's, yes, I mean, preserving peace and life, the preservation of that which is good and right. And they're big questions, and they sound glib and simple as one says them, but they also are the essence, you know. We protect there are forces out there that want to coerce, manipulate, dominate, corrupt, exploit for short-term ends of greed and prosperity and power, and they crush life. We see it, certainly, I think we see it in Myanmar at the moment, the worst kind of, you know, the punishing of the people so that those in power can just have complete control. You know, we are English. We come from, you know, we're full of mess and fallibility, and we have our corrupt politicians or useless politicians, perhaps. But I think we have a sense of, you know, we're open, and I think the principles of the freedom of the individual to lead the life and there's a kind of humanitarian sense of we are free citizens. And weirdly, the Duke of Oxford, born into privilege, obscene privilege possibly, but this character has a sense of the duty to protect and to preserve the life, the life that goes on, the quotidian life. You know, I think we're all pacifists. We're all born on the back of. I mean, my parents were children in the Second World War, but I still grew up with the sense of the legacy. Only when I reflect that I was aware of the Second World War perhaps when I was 8 or 9 in comic books, and that would have been in the late 60s. That was only 20 years before or so the war had finished. When I think 20 years of nothing, I think 20 years ago is 2001. That seems like yesterday. So, I mean, the Second World War was yesterday when I was a child, as it were, in that sense. And the legacy of the horror of that has sort of rippled through my life, and I think we all know that this very recent history was shattering for the world and for Europe and all parts of the world, of course. So I think the Duke of Oxford today would be faced with the same dilemma, when there are certain countries out there that seem to be wanting to escalate into conflict and looking for an excuse for conflict. And there are some points where perhaps the pacifist principle is not helpful, but I feel one applauds it, because the horrors, the destruction, the suffering of war is hard to contemplate. But sometimes, I think it's inherent in man, I think, to go to war sometimes. I think it's part of how we are made.
Let's talk about Shola, your character. Is a fantastic bodyguard and a right-hand man. I would always have someone like him by my side in every battle. So what is the aspect of your character that intrigued you the most? Maybe sense of loyalty?
I would say for Shola's character, it's what is ambiguous about Shola is what we don't know. It's, part of his backstory that we don't really get into, but that's sort of like hanging in the air in a story. I play Shola, a former sort of like a warrior from Africa who befriended the Duke of Oxford in Africa, and began to work together, and that led to having a strong affinity for one another. Obviously, he experienced the death of his wife, back in Africa, and so he indirectly also becomes instrumentally important in the structuring of the first independent, secret agency, intelligence agency. And so, yeah, he's sort of like the right-hand man to the Duke of Oxford. Well, for Shola, I think the Shola comes from a world of fighting anyway. He's a warrior. So this is an element, a world that he comes from, so that it is, sort of his world but collaborating with Matthew, working with Ralph Fiennes, and it was really kind of like being a student in a classroom, I just had to, pay attention that I'm in a scene with them sometimes, especially with Ralph. I mean, I'm working with him, so I have to somewhat be conscientious of the fact that I'm involved in a scene with him, not be sitting with my mouth open as if, right? But that whole experience was absolutely, elevating and humbling at the same time.
What is it like to be part of a franchise as a dynamic and fun as Kingsman? Did you see the films before taking part of this movie? And what aspect do you like the most about this saga?
What I like the most about this is, as much as the prequel to the series of Kingsman that we've seen, it's a story that stands alone. It's a story that it's a world apart, from the other two, and so in that essence, I think also bring us a part of a historical knowledge that I thought Matthew Vaughn was very smart about bringing into this fictional. In this fictional world, all that was a very, quite an exciting sort of like approach to the film.
Yeah, of course. But he was somebody I was curious about. I was curious about him, but in the same way I was curious as to who was in the E.T. costume in the film. Nothing beyond that, really. yeah, so I was curious, and and of course when I got the role, my curiosity was rekindled, you know, and I got to, you know, learn a lot more about Rasputin and discovered that he was anyway a figure who was shrouded in mystery and rumor and myth in real life. So it kind of fitted well to move him into the world of a fantastical film like Kingsman, where things can be changed and twisted a little bit. And you know, he's a performative figure. You know, he was a performer of sorts himself. You know, he conned people, you know, with his mysticism and his powers, and so it lends itself well to. It's kind of a gift for an actor, really, and the look is so strong. If you put the wig and the beard and the moustache on my mother and asked people who's that, they would say Rasputin.
Yeah, I think Matthew sort of like challenged me at the start and played me off Taron Egerton a little bit and was like, you know, Taron did a lot of his stunts. Are you gonna? And it was like, I suppose so. I mean, I suppose I'll give it a good go. But yeah, I mean, we were lucky. We had brilliant people around us. We both had the same trainer, Tony Bayliss, who was ex-Special Forces, and he really pushed me and sort of gave, you know, it's important because it gives you like structure that you otherwise don't have. But yeah, we'd be out on runs in the forest and I'd have a little sore toe or something and I'd be about to complain and he'd start talking about the time he didn't sleep for 6 days and he was under enemy fire, and I'd just be like, yeah, no, I'm fine.
Me and Harris used to bump into each other in the early days before we started, early days of training, you know, and we didn't know each other too well then, so we'd be crossing paths from training and we'd just be looking at each other like, like, how's it going, mate? I'm all right. I'm all right. I think I'm all right. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought every day I thought I was going to have a stroke and a heart attack. Well, the whole fight, you know, we were training and working on stunts, on basic kind of stunt disciplines for a month. And then, but we were still trying to find a language, a physical language that was specific to Rasputin. And then Matthew just bounded into the rehearsal one day and said, I've got it! Russian dancing, martial arts. And then everybody went, what? And he said, mix them up and show me what it is. So that's what happened, you know. And this incredible stunt team came up with this new physical language, you know. And all of which I had to learn, but some of those moves are impossible for somebody, even of my fitness levels, to achieve. And even the stuntmen couldn't do them. So we brought in two Georgian dancers who had trained in doing these crazy moves since they were babies almost, you know. And they were incredible. So the fight scene is brilliant, and yes, I can say I'm very proud of it, and I'm good in it. But my contribution is maybe 5%. Okay. Yeah, many people are responsible for making that scene what it is.
Well, I think as someone someone growing up in that sort of confined lifestyle, in the aristocracy, is definitely something I didn't know, and I think my character certainly wanted to break free of it a little bit and experience things and serve and fight for his country at the time where everyone was doing it and everyone was being defined by it, you know. So I guess I was surprised by his willingness to leave everything behind him, perhaps.
Grazie mille.
You too, grazie mille, ciao.
Arrivederci.